the price of food items in Nigeria is trending down. That's the news from different parts. And I mean, every Tuesday, Thursdays especially, we do show you the numbers right here. Can we sustain it? And of course, as expected, we've heard government officials count it as one of the gains of the reforms by the President Bola TINUBU administration. Is it sustainable? That's what we should be asking. That's what the Director General of Agribusiness Center is joining us to discuss. So right here we have Dr. Philip Nto. He is the Director General of Agribusiness Center at the University of Agriculture, Umudike. He's also an Associate Professor at the MICHEAL OKPARA University of Agriculture, Umudike. Thank you so much, Dr. Nto, for your time, and welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So would you say it is justified that the decline in price of some food items in the country can be credited to the reforms of this present administration?
Well, I would say that the price of food materials are increasing. If you check from the statistics presented by National Bureau of Statistics, I think food prices are increasing up to 40%. So you can't say the price of food items are dropping. They are not declining. They are rather increasing, because they are not things that you can say this is something that will make you to say that it will come down in the nearest future, because production is not moving to match the consumption. So price of food items, they are not dropping, they are not declining. And that is my take on that.
Okay, so you said because production is not meeting up with demand, but we see a lot of government policy, at least here, a lot of government policies, and see some efforts which they put together. Are you saying they are not effective enough, or they are not what we should be doing?
There is a mismatch in the government policy formulation. There are certain things that are not taken into consideration, like the value chain is not taken into consideration. The policy is more of end at production rather than value chain. And you see every year we lose up to $9 billion to post-harvest losses, which if you convert is more than 14 trillion naira, which is big enough to offset our budgetary deficit. So by implication, our problem is not the production. Our problem is the post-harvest losses. We don't formulate policies in value addition. We rather formulate last within, you don't add value, you don't think of how you can process. The price drop will just be within that period when there is market glut. And when there is market glut, the price will drop, which is merely artificial, it's not sustainable. But if you want the price to be sustained at a particular rate, what you will do is to add value. Let me take, for instance, at a certain period, you see tomato everywhere. At a certain period, you see onions everywhere, orange everywhere, cassava everywhere. The price at that period, because there is a glut, will drop. But for government, I will advise that the best thing will be for government to formulate policies where value will be added to all those items. Like if it's tomato, you now process them so that they can last beyond the production period. If it's orange, you process them, you add value. If it's palm oil or this thing, you process, add value so that it can last for a longer period. But if you don't do that, what may likely happen is that within that period, there will be high supply and there will be low demand. And at that particular period, the price will drop. Just within that period of less than a month or two, because just take, for instance, maize. Maize is only for a period. During the period of production, the price will drop. But after that, it will rise. So my advice is that for government to formulate policies that will now ensure that the value is added. So at that period, when there is market glut, then those they will be acquired and then processed. If it's something like maize, it will be processed into flour that will last a longer period. If it's a tomato, you process them into tomato paste. If it's orange, you process them into orange juice, which can last a longer period. Even yam, But if you allow them within that period, it means you will just buy your yam, buy your tomato, buy your orange and the rest of them. Eat them within that period. After a while, we still go back to square zero and start to suffer our normal period food insecurity.
Yeah, but Dr. Anso, do we need government policy for that? Wouldn't you say that perhaps the private sector could come in? We hear of commodity boards, and commodity exchanges. Shouldn't private sector come in and see this as a sort of investment? Because, I mean, obviously there'll be profits made out of it.
Yeah, for me, I think that the best should be a multifaceted approach where the government, the private sector will come together. All the stakeholders will come together. Let me give you one example. You see National Assembly members, Federal House members, they do what they call empowerment in their constituencies. For me, what government should do is to say, okay, since we have over 9 billion naira that you lost through post-harvest issues, the best will be let each community has a particular crop which they have comparative advantage over others. Let me say tomato or cassava. If your constituency has comparative advantage in the production of cassava, then use that money that they use in doing empowerment to set up a factory. When you set up factory, then you now maybe get microfinance bank that will be an off-taker that will buy from the farmers, they process them, and then sell to the final consumer. With that, the person will create jobs, and then the wealth will be sustained in that particular constituency. Rather than giving them the empowerment, maybe you share them keke, share them motorcycle, share them all this and that. But if you set up a agricultural product processing plant, which is very cheap, and then get a microfinance bank within that locality, or get any private sector person or somebody to be an off-taker. The person will move around the farms and then off-take the agricultural products and then send them to the factory. The factory will now process and then sell to the final consumers. By implication, the farmer is given money to continue with his production. One thing that is peculiar with Nigeria is that our farmers don't know much about value addition. And given that they don't know much about value addition, they only produce and send to the market. And from the process of producing from the farm, they may decay. Most of them may experience one different form of accident or the other. But if there is an off-taker that can buy those things from the farmer, process them in the same locality, and then sell them to where they are needed, you've discovered that food will be there, employment will be provided, so many things. You have taken care of solved so many problems. I think that is the way government policy should go. Rather than encouraging production only. When you encourage production without thinking of what will happen to the value, what value added to what is produced, you find out that there will be a market glut, and the whole food produced within that period will be wasted. That is why we have that up to 14 trillion agricultural products wasted every year, which can make a lot of people millionaires. I see many millionaires tapping from that, not even from ICT, not from oil company, but from the agricultural sector. It's just for them to now say, okay, this 14 million, how can I tap from it? How to tap from it is that, okay, at the point of production, you can say, okay, what you do is to now set up a transportation company, because most of these things, you must carry them under a conducive condition, low temperature. You now carry them from the farm to where they are needed. You have created job. You can also, like you see tomato, when they are harvested, they are poured into a jute bag or sack bag, which cannot be sustained for a long period. So I think the best thing would be for people, private sector, to take advantage of that and then tap from it. Because I know that with that, jobs are created. That is my position on that.
All right, Dr. Anto, I'm glad you talked about the need for knowledge and enlightenment, and of course it should come from the private sector. And talking about jobs there, you are in, the University of Agriculture. You have young youths there, people who are almost out of school. How much of this knowledge and consciousness, of this part of agriculture, how much do you impute in the students who are in you?
The network is dropping. Please, can you come again? It's dropping.
Okay, can you hear me now, Dr. Onto? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I was asking, you are in a University of Agriculture. How much of this knowledge and consciousness of this side value adding into agricultural produce, how much of that do you put in your students or those who are still there, those who are about to leave, so that as they leave, they don't need to go and look for jobs, they can actually just plug themselves in these missing gaps in the value chain?
Yeah, I didn't hear you correctly because the network dropped at a certain point. But I think the question you asked is the role of the university. In our own university, Vice Chancellor Professor Madu Iwe set up, because with the mandate of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, set up Agribusiness Incubation Center. The whole idea is that the center will be a hub where you can now train the rural farmers on value chain, so that you don't just produce your product, you also add value to them. Let me give you one, like potato. Potato can be converted to so many things. Research done by our university staff has shown that you can produce so many things. Even before, we used to think that you can only produce bread from wheat, from other flour. But you can produce bread from potato. You can produce bread from cocoyam. You can produce, and so many other things. So in our university, that is the essence of the Agribusiness Incubation Center, where products of research are passed down to the farmers. So from there, since there is a missing link between the production and value chain, from there the university is trying to bridge the gap, so that whatever that is produced, you don't just eat it within that period. It will now be processed, where they can even last up to a year or so.
All right, interesting, Dr. Onto, and we do hope, that maybe more schools will be more practical in all of this. But for you now, since you said, the price of food items from your perspective are not declining, and so we cannot even attach it to the reforms of the government, which a lot of government officials have been heard saying. What do you think we should do at this point in Nigeria? You talked about the issue of post-harvest losses, adding of value to, production so that it can be stored and kept for a longer time. What should be the immediate steps at this time to help bring these things that you have highlighted?
Like I said before, the thing government policy should be around value addition now, not production. If you check, the idea of production is as old as the colonial policies, where agricultural products are only produced and exported to Europe and America, where they will now be processed. After that, they sell it back to us. So that is why then not much was done about value addition. But in the current period, we should talk about value addition, because the decline you will only have in a particular period is seasonal, based on the seasonality of the crop that is produced. If it is during the period of rice production, you see price of rice will drop. But when government add value that will now increase the shelf life, you find out that rice will last throughout the period. If it's tomato, it will last throughout the period. If it's onions, it will last throughout the period. So government policy should be centered on agribusiness value chain rather than production. And also, yes, production is also important, because if you emphasize more on value chain without talking about production, you see a situation where there will not be enough raw materials to process. Just like that is why that will take me to what is happening in some places where insecurity has chased away so many farmers. Like in the north and in the south, you have communal clashes. In the north, you have banditry, Boko Haram, and the rest of them. Many farmers are now living in the IDP camps. So there should also be policy. I'm quite impressed with the 2025 budget, where much fund is devoted to fight insecurity. That is a good step because that money indirectly is also has a direct bearing with agriculture. I can see that the next in line in that order is infrastructure, which means if there is infrastructure, you can easily move your agricultural products on a motorable road. And also, most of these things are perishable. You can easily process them. They will be incessant. There will be energy that will help most of these farmers to process their crops. I think there is need for private sector collaboration in all these things, not just government alone. Private sector should also come in. When I say private sector should come in, is that, like I said, every year we lose up to 14 trillion naira. People can develop business opportunities around that and then create wealth where people can be employed in their factories, in their businesses, in their enterprises. So it's not just government, it should be all-encompassing.
All right, Dr. Phillips Nto, the Director General of Agribusiness Center at MICHEAL, OKPARA University of Agriculture. Umudike, thank you so much for your perspective this morning.
Thank you.